Tonight we're going to be going over a lot of kind of tips and tricks to make developing easier. You may have known some of this stuff, some of the stuff you probably don't. I think you'll find something useful in here. I probably got about 20 or 30 tips in here. A lot of these things I didn't know, years into development, and I'm still learning like little tidbits that help me along. And, it's you figure out stuff years later and you're kind of like, how have I not known that? Or, just simple things that have slid under the radar. And sometimes there are updates happen and that introduce new things that you didn't even know existed. So I'm going to go over a lot of that. For this, you can use any data set because it's really not building anything specific. It's more about user interface and usability type stuff. Some of this first stuff is really easy, you probably know, but we'll get into more interesting and complex stuff as we go. So bear with me, some of this stuff. So first thing we can go over is the right-click drag, which if you don't know, when you left-click something and drag it out, it'll just drop the raw number in there. If you right-click drag, it'll give you different options on how to sum it. If you're dropping a date field in here, it will ask you differently the date range that you're wanting. If you don't specify one and you just left-click and drag, it'll just default to the year. So right-click drag is pretty useful. One way that I tend to use it a lot is let's say we just want to get a count of, let's say, how many cities are in each state or something like that. So if I drop city in here to columns, it's just going to give me a list here. But typically I wanted to get a count, you would have to do a calculated field and you would have to do a count distinct, right? So and we just do city. All right, I click OK. And if I drag state in here, and then where's that calc? So the right count. That's why you name things good. So you can do it that way. Another way, a way to do it would just be instead of having to write a calculation. Now, a calculation is useful if you're going to be using that throughout your entire workbook. But you can also just right-click the city, drag it out, and say count distinct city, and it'll do the same thing for you. Though it changes to a bar graph, it's still the same. So if we filter on and there, it gives you kind of idea. So a simple way to do a count distinct, just right-click drag. With that being said, you can also, most people know this, but you can also hold the control key to duplicate a column. So instead of having to come over here and find one, this is a pretty small data set, but if you have a large data set with, like 50 different columns in here and a whole bunch of measures and calculations, things get cluttered pretty quickly, especially if you're hooking directly up to tables instead of bringing in data sets like store procedures. If you're hooking it straight up to the database and you're just hooking directly up to tables, you could get a whole bunch of extra data. It can be hard to find what you're looking for. So just simple, a control key. I can hold the control and drag this in the label, and it will count it. If I don't hold the control key, we'll actually take it out of the column shelf, which is a little annoying. So holding the control key, and this is also good for creating dual axis where I need to duplicate the same thing over and over again, right? So those are some simple usability things. And also double clicking to add measures as well. So if I take all this off, let's say I bring region on, you can double click to add measures, which some people don't know. Instead of having to constantly come over here and drag and bring it in, you can double click. So those are simple things. I'm sure y'all probably knew that stuff. It doesn't hurt to go over it. This one's not as important as it used to be. So sometimes the sidebar, let me clear everything up there. So sometimes we have this little sidebar, and sometimes we accidentally hide it by mistake, which can be easy to do. It used to be that there was a really tiny little arrow down here, but they've since updated it, so it's up here now, so you can clearly see it. So it's easy to know when you hit it. It used to be very frustrating because it would actually collapse the whole thing, and there would be no indication that there was still a toolbar collapsed over here. But you can also go to Window here and open up your sidebar. If ever your toolbar up here disappears, you'll find it up here as well. Then your status bar down here at the bottom, you can also toggle on and off as well. So that one, like I said, not quite as big a deal as it used to be. Another pretty cool thing you can do is you can, let me actually, so one thing you can actually do here is you can copy and paste data directly into Tableau. So this is useful if you're just wanting to do a quick summary of some data, just to kind of get a mock-up going. So you can actually, come on. Oh, I don't know what's going on here. Here we go. You can highlight whatever you want, hit Control C, open up a new window, and you can either hit Control V or you can go to paste data here. I'm just going to hit Control V. Give that a second to boot up. And you have all these columns in here, and then you can kind of play around with it and do what you want. So this is a quick and easy way. Like I said, just do summary data. Now, the one drawback of this is definitely just for testing and for mockups, because you can see up here, it copies it to the clipboard. So if you close this notebook, I don't think it'll remove the data. If you reset your computer, it will for sure remove it. But sometimes you can recover the workbook and it might still be in there. So anyway, you can do that as well. You can also, we'll do the copy formatting here in a minute, but you can also copy actual worksheets from a dashboard and then plug it into a separate dashboard, like a different workbook. You can only do that in Tableau Desktop. This is public. My desktop's not open on this computer. So, but do note that you can, if you're ever like, if you ever have a dashboard that you're trying to bring over a sheet from a different dashboard, you can copy and paste the sheet or the dashboard. You can bring over that dashboard to the new workbook. Also in the data source, you can drag and drop data sources into your source data here. I'm not going to touch this because it'll mess it up. But if you open up your file explorer and you don't know what connection to use, you can actually just drag the file directly into this and it will actually figure it out for you. So a lot of people don't know that. It's pretty useful as well. Okay, you can also do summary data. So let me clear this off again. Let's just do market sales. So this is pretty useful. You can right click a blank space and you can go to summary. It'll actually summarize a lot of the data for you. So if you're trying to validate numbers or something, let's change this to a bar graph. It'd be a little more useful. So if you're validating numbers in a workbook and you're comparing it to something else, this is a quick way that you can look at the overview of the numbers. You can also add some. You can use quartiles, standard deviation. I don't know what kurtosis is, or skewness. I haven't really used those. But anyway, this is a good way to get a high level of just kind of what's going on in the workbook, and it's good for validating. When you're in the workplace, you'll be doing a lot of validating data because you don't want to publish dashboards to production if the data is wrong and you have people making decisions also that are incorrect. So as you go through UAT and you do testing and stuff, this can come in handy on occasions. You can also describe sheet. So this one is actually very useful. Let's just say I'll throw this count in here in the detail or whatever. You can see it also does the summary of the count. So there will be instances where toolbar, or let's say, especially when you're new on the job, but sometimes you have to pick apart somebody else's workbook, and sometimes they just give you a dashboard and say, all right, deconstruct and reverse engineer this, and we're going to create this same type of dashboard for a different data set. When stuff like that happens, you can go to your describe sheet. So you go up here to worksheet, and you go to describe sheet right here. It'll actually give you a summary of all the data that's in here. It will also show you any custom calculations. here's that calculation I just added into the detail just so it would pop up. So you have count ranges 321, 1277, and the formula is that's the count distinct on the city I did earlier. So this is very useful for when it's a workbook that you don't really know, and you're trying to see what calculations are building it instead of having to, again, there's nothing really on here, but if I had like, 5 measures and a couple dimensions and a whole bunch of stuff in the detail and labels, and I'm trying to pick apart and see what the custom calcs are and all this stuff, it can be a little tedious. So being able to describe the worksheet is very good. Also, I've noticed this a lot more with several companies I work for. A lot of them now do a summary where they have a dashboard at the end that just kind of has a big text field that describes a lot of the logic within the dashboard, which is very useful for the customer. A lot of scenarios that you'll get customers that you'll have 5 dashboards that are very similar, but they're different for a reason, and the numbers don't match. And you'll get customers that come in and say, well, these 2 dashboards don't match. And then you have to explain why they don't match, or maybe you forget and you have to go research. Where when you have a summary sheet at the end that just says, all right, well, here's the logic, the customer can just read it themselves, and it saves you a lot of having to describe and explain things to your customers. So there's that. Also, sometimes this is happens a lot. So sometimes we go to hide filled label rows. You can't hit the back button to show it, but sometimes you develop, another sheet and you have it all the way you want it, and you don't want to hit the back button to mess it up. So you can get back these row labels, which is not very straightforward. You should be able to just click here and show it. But you actually have to go up to analysis here. Go to Tableau layout, and then showed fill labels from rows, which is a bit silly to put there, kind of quirky, not my favorite feature there, but that is how you get your fill labels back if you ever make them disappear. That happens quite a lot. And then if you do hide the axis, which is also your header when you're doing an axis, you can come up here and do show header here, and you can make it pop back up. So again, I know when I was first starting out, it was very frustrating when these things disappeared and you'd have to go Google and look it up. And it would take you 10 minutes to find out something that could take you 2 seconds, right? And then also if you had the title, for hide title, you can just right click any blank space. Just click title and it'll pop back up. So ideally, the better user interface would have all those options in the blank space when you right click, but it's not. So that's how you retrieve all those things: the header, the axis, the field label views. Okay, so this one's a bit annoying as well. This should be an easy thing to do in Tableau. It's not necessarily hard, but sometimes we want our field labels to be at the top for different instances. Maybe it's a formatting thing. Maybe it could be a number of reasons. Sometimes you just want to show at the top, just for whatever reason. So to do that, you have to go to analysis again, table layout, and you go to advanced here. And there's this little checkbox right here. If you unclick that, click apply, it moves them to the top. Again, not the most user-friendly way to put that, especially for a header when the formatting options are usually in the format button. You right click and go to format. It really should be in here somewhere. But anyway, so that's how you change that as well. Oh yeah. And this is also a quirky one. Showing a lot of the interface stuff that annoys me. So when I add sales in here, the problem here is it doesn't tell me that it's sales, right? But if I add another one and do profit, all right, now it shows me sales and profit. I don't know why they do that. Should be pretty straightforward. So if you're only trying to show one field and you want that to show, when you bring your second measure on here, you'll see that you'll get this measure names here. Then you can open up these names. I think you do it up here. Edit filter, and then remove the one you don't want. Click apply, and it will keep the field label row. So again, not the most user friendly, but that is how you can kind of force it to show the label there. Yeah, it should be easy. You should be able to just click it and do it. Especially with Tableau being so user friendly with 95% of things, these little 5% things, they're kind of annoying. So another thing that is a common scenario that you'll run into is sometimes we want to remove this ABC. So sometimes you're just trying to show stuff. Let's do. So sometimes you're for whatever reason you're not trying to show the numbers. It does happen once in a while where there's a layout and you're showing something else as opposed to raw numbers. You want this ABC to disappear. The easiest way to do that, there's two ways. One is just to change this to polygon. Now the problem with that is you get rid of your row banding. So if you want to keep your row banding, all you do is just do a calculated field. Just gonna name it blank. Gonna leave an empty string just like that. And then you should be able to drag this. Oops. I think you drag it to text. Let me see. Yeah, you drag it to text. Now you can keep your row banding. You don't have to have the ABCs. And then ideally you could collapse that down just a little bit or something like that. Yeah. Sometimes you can collapse it like that or something like that. So anyway, so you can get rid of the ABC stuff. That's useful. I've had to run into that a few times as well. All right, so now into some of the no, we're not at that yet. Also totals and subtotals. So let's drag, we have market category, and let's do subcategory right in here. And let's do sales here. So totals are pretty straightforward. Totals, you can just go to analysis and do totals, and you can do show column grand totals, and you scroll down the bottom, and there's the total, right? Sometimes we want subtotals though, broken out into each individual pane. So we can do that by going to analytics and just double clicking totals here, and it will actually give me a summary. And you can see it groups each box here. So we have the subcategory total right there. Then we have the category totals for each one as well. And then we have the market subtotal as well. So there's all our totals broken out. And then you still have your grand total at the bottom. So that's how you do that. And you can format those to show a little bit better, make the text a little darker so that it stands out. So that's a neat little thing that I didn't know about for the longest as well. Okay, so we also have color gradients. So let's remove. So we got sales, we got profit. We can also do, change this to average. Okay, so if I bring this into color here and I change this to square, we have this background. Now, the problem here, and it may not be obvious up front, and actually let me get rid of those. Really, okay. So this color gradient is actually all one gradient, and it's basing it off just one of these measures. So you can see over here we have our legend. It says measure values 88 to 1.5 million. So that's the gradient, and it throws things off because these really small numbers, they don't stand out compared to the other ones. So this is an average. So this 341 should be a little bit darker than this 96, but since it's such a large color gradient that goes all the way up to the millions, all these center ones here are just going to be light. So to the user, visually, it's not as user friendly as it could be. So what you can do here is you can actually click this pill. It says use separate legends. And now they each have their own legend. Again, it depends on how you want to show this. And what's nice is that over here on the right, it breaks out each one so that you can change the color of each one. So I double click here. And that's also something I didn't know for the longest. I would always go to this color thing here. In this case, you can't even edit the colors because it's not set up that way. But you can, whenever you have a legend, you can double click the legend and it will bring up the colors for that. And then I can change, whatever I want. You can make them whatever. I'm not going to make this, not gonna spend too much time on making it lovely or anything like that. So let's take a different individual gradients. Also, again, a lot of these are very scenario based, but I have encountered all these things at least once. Let's see what else. Okay, sorting. So this one is one that is very useful that you may already know. So a lot of times, let me think how to set this up so that it makes sense. Let's do category and subcategory. So if I bring subcategory out, and just to make sure this is going to do what I want it to, yes. And then let's bring out sales. And let's change this to a bar chart. Let's sort it. And let's say I want the top 10. How many we got here? Also, if you ever know how many rows you have, down here in the bottom left, it will actually tell you. So I have 17 rows by one column. Now, let's say I want to do a top 10 on subcategory. So I come here, I go to my top, do my top 10 by sales. I click OK, and it filters it out. That's great. The problem is, if I bring out category into my filters, let's just do all. And then I'm going to show filter. So if I unclick one here, here's the problem. I'm doing a top 10, but now I have, what is that, 7 rows? So if I unclick another one, and actually, you know what, this may be too small of a data set. Let me do, let's do product. And sorry, I realized that was too small to really show you what I was talking about. So there we go. So same thing here. So there's obviously more than 10 records in that for each one of these. So there should always be at least 10 records. That's why I changed those out. The other one, there wasn't necessarily 10 for each one. So I always want a top 10. So how I fix that is I can use a rank or index. I typically always use an index. And all you do is just do index. And the index, I'm going to filter on that instead. Actually, let me remove both of these real quick. And let's just do 10. So the reason the other one wasn't sorting properly because it was always doing a top 10 on the category or whatever I put it on, the subcategory or the product. it's going to rank those top 10 products. So it doesn't matter what you filter on, it's always going to keep those 10. So if you filter and remove 3 of those records and you have 7, it's locked in on that product category. Where here, this index, it's locked in on the row number. So it doesn't matter what I filter on. So if I come back to category, even subcategory, show these. Now, if you start clicking these, you can see it readjusts. So there's always 10. So that's super useful. If you didn't know, that's how that works. You can also use a rank and specify what you want to rank on. I'm a little rusty on rank. I don't even know. Let me find it over here. Yeah, so rank you can define. Where index is just set on the row number. A rank you can actually define specifically. So if you'll do average, sales, or something like that, you can rank it like that. And that can be useful if you're maybe sorting by profit, but want it to be ranked on the most sales, or vice versa would probably be better. If you're showing the sales amount in your rows, but you want to rank it maybe on the most profitable products, so that way you can see what the sales are like for your most profitable ones or something like that. You could use a rank instead. So same. I typically use index though. So I'm moving some notes around here. Okay, so let's talk about containers real quick. So let me create. Let's just do sales. And let's format that real quick. And let's make this bold and maybe 15 so it stands out. A nice thing you can do, and I'll use this example here in a minute again, but I can copy my formatting. So if I want to copy formatting and then come over here and paste the formatting so I don't have to redo each number, it's pretty useful. I will also save the color stuff, the features as well. I'll show that again in a minute. Okay, so this is not going to be a pretty dashboard, but show the title. So from a formatting perspective, if I were to drag out each one of these, you can see that it doesn't really evenly distribute them. So you have to come over here and you have to kind of manually move things. And if you ever do have to manually move things, you just come to layout and you can see like the width. So this width is 154, that one's 163. So I know I can go that way just a pinch, or you can just, let's see, I think if you lock that. Oh yeah, you can only change them manually if it's floating. But anyway, that way you can get an idea of proportions. Like 157, 154, visibly nobody's gonna be able to notice the difference there. But if I'm dragging these out manually, and if let's say I have like 3 or 4 more of these, it's going to be a bit hard to get them all spaced, and it's just really tedious. That's one thing a container is really useful for. Containers are actually useful for a lot of things. I probably should do a whole class on containers. I didn't use them for the longest time because I didn't understand their functionality. So first thing about a container is it does not matter if you use vertical or horizontal. So if I drag out a vertical container, honestly, Tableau should just change it to just container, because it only matters what you drag in there. So the first one I drag in there, it doesn't change the container. The second one, if I drag it on underneath, it's going to be a vertical, I'm sorry, a horizontal container. No, that's not right. It's going to be a vertical. If I drag it to the side, it's going to be a horizontal. So the container in itself, whichever one you drag out, is irrelevant. It's whatever order you drag things in on. So if I let this go over here, and then I take the next one and I drag it over next to it, and then I just make each one fit entire view. You see it spaces out perfectly for me. And now if I need to do, if I need to make changes, I need to change it, it will keep them all formatted. And also there will be instances where I need to move all those things at once. Maybe I'm adding something above it. I don't like the layout. So you can just drag them all together, which is really, really nice. It just makes life really easy. So that's one thing you can use a container for. There's tons of other things. I'll probably do a container class here in the future. So that's one way you can use containers, just for formatting. I see a lot of students in their projects, they don't use the containers and they have like, 20 different things they're trying to move around. And as a developer, it's very tedious and time consuming. That would, you could spend 30 minutes to an hour just moving things around to get them, adjusted properly. Another nice little thing you can do this for the worksheet or the dashboard, but you can actually format the whole dashboard together. So we're talking worksheet titles. If I want to change all the worksheet titles, I can do all that at once instead of having to go to each one by one and change it, change the colors and the backgrounds and all that good stuff. That's a nice little tidbit. Second, looking through my notes. Okay, so this one, this is going to help a lot of you a lot. When I used to struggle a lot with the colors on a dashboard, which would seem silly, but I have literally spent the whole day trying to get colors to match. Early on when I first started developing, and I'm still sometimes get a little obsessive about colors because I'm not really. I'm more of a user interface person. I'm very good at building a dashboard that's very functional, has a good flow to it from a usability standpoint that the customers can really like interpret the data and answer the questions. So I'm really a UI, UX person, but the colors and like the artistic aspect, sometimes I really struggle with trying to get colors to match. So a good way to get good colors to match. Let me share my whole screen. So if you really want to make good looking dashboards, this is the simplest cheat code there is. I mean, this is a really good. So the first thing, this is Figma. I'm not really going to go into super detail. Figma is a fantastic design tool. You can build all kinds of mock-ups. I build a lot of custom shapes like toggle bars and stuff like that I can import into Tableau to use. You can also, I've seen people use all kinds of really nice custom backgrounds that go in the back behind your dashboard that gives it kind of some unique features. That's not really what I was wanting to show, but Figma, if you take the time to learn that just a little bit, it's super useful. And if you're really like a design person about your dashboards, it's super useful. What I want to show is color palette generator. So I use an app. I use two of them. Coolers is one, and I'll show this one. The other one is called, let me check, I think it's called Pigment. Yeah, Pigments with an S. Both those I have on my Android. I don't know if they're on iPhones, but I'm sure there's a comparable one. Coolers, I do know for sure is for iPhone. A coworker shared that with me. So I use this all the time. So Coolers is a really cool palette generator. Whenever you're generating a palette for a dashboard, and let me scoot this over. And actually, let me pick a more interesting color here. So I'm just going to choose a yellow, which can be a hard color to pair things with, right? So we go to this Coolers, and again, these are apps, and Canva is also one that I'm starting to experiment with. What I was saying earlier, I didn't finish the statement. Whenever you're picking colors for your dashboard, really no more than like 5 colors. That was always the problem I had. I always came up with like 15, you know, things get out of control, especially when you start using pie graphs and things that can use multiple colors. For those things that typically use gradients and stuff. But this is pretty cool. You can sign up for an account. You can pay for the paid version. The Pigments one for me, I like better as an app. It's just a little bit easier to use, especially with the free part. It just gives you a little more options. But you can go to generator here, and let's say I go to my color. I'm going to go find this HTML or this hex code. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pop it in here. It gives me all these color palettes that match together. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, what is the standard blue that Tableau uses? So Tableau has actually invested a ton of money into color palette stuff. They've done a lot of research on visibility, what hurts the eyes, what doesn't hurt the eyes, what pairs together. Their custom palettes are very good. Um, but I noticed one thing in here as I was playing around with this earlier. Let me, oh, come on. So if I type in the standard blue, this default blue for Tableau, I actually notice those are the colors right there. Those are the default to pair together. So Tableau already has a lot of these paired based on the palettes you use. They already work really well. Let me go back to that yellow I had just as an example. So I typically use between 3 and 5 colors and no more. And in the app, you can restrict it to 5. And here, I'm not really sure what to hit to restrict it to 5, but you can see some of these 5 pairs here. I typically go with like darker palettes, just because it's easier on my eyes. Um, that's the Coolers app. It's better on the phone. And I just recently discovered this Canva one. I really like Canva. I use it quite a bit here and there for different things. See, these are the type of the color. I usually use these darker colors with one really light one. Like I would change this out for a brighter color that really pops, or maybe this one. I actually built a dashboard recently that they kind of use these with a yellow. But you can a little new to this one. Yeah. So you come in here, there's that yellow. Here's the complementary color. So yellow and blue pairs nicely. You can do the, I think, tetradic, which is 4. These all pair well together. So anyway, just to use this real quick, I simply like the monochromatic stuff. And you can export the palette too. So let me use an easier color that's not so bright. Yeah, I tend to stick with monochromatic, so I like these palettes, and then I'll use something bright for like the bar graph. But anyway, so instead of having this default white, I can now come in here and I can do the worksheet. So I can try that gray on the back. And then we'll change the bar graph to something else. I'll probably use a little bit lighter here. And I'm just playing around. I'm not going to keep any of this, but just to show you. I don't like that, but I really just want to change the letters. And if you want to make it pop, maybe you can do the header a different color. Um, and I forget how to format the grid lines. That would stand out. But anyway, also the nice thing about the color is that it saves your palettes that you're using right here. Now, there are instances where, we think, oh, and what's also nice, let's say I want to keep this formatting. So I have this, I can copy this formatting and then come over here. I can paste it. Usually it changes the bars too. I don't know why, but oh, it's because I have that in there. So these aren't necessarily colors I would use. I'm just showing you that it's much easier to pair using a palette like this. So this should help some of you out with what you're trying to do. And then another cool thing you can do, and obviously I need to format all the other stuff too. With the color, this is something I figured out. So I had ignored this forever. I didn't even realize this existed. But you can pick the screen color, and I use it sometimes. Let me cancel that. I use it sometimes when you're building a dashboard and you have things that are small and things that are big. And even though they have the same color, just because of the size, the colors sometimes look different. So it's kind of like an illusion on the eye. So to validate that I have the right color, sometimes I'll take this screen color and I'll just click that screen and it'll give me the HTML. What I didn't know is that you can take the screen color, you can actually go over here on anything and click it, and it will give you that exact whatever it is, right? Like even hovering over here down this to this Excel files, give me the Excel green there, Zoom blue, So pretty cool. So if you see a color palette online somewhere that you really like, you can use a screen color to click on it and kind of steal those colors. So anyway, that's that. Um, Trying to think what else. And then maybe I'll do a Figma demo one day just to show people how to use it, because it is pretty useful. It minimizes stuff. Let's see what else I have. Oh yeah, I wanted to show. So as I was talking earlier, these legends here. What I didn't know about the legends for a long time too is that you could actually sort from the legend itself. You can also pick individual colors from here as well. Another thing I want to touch on real quick are formatting pie charts, which can be used to be a headache, but now I understand some parts of it. Let's try market. I wonder profits. This will work, I guess. So this example, this is actually a decent pie chart because everything's proportional, but you will get instances where you'll have sometimes you'll have maybe 10 slices of the pie and you'll have a couple that are really small. For a long time, I didn't know you could actually just click on these and move these around. So that's pretty useful. When you do move those, sometimes you have to play around. Sometimes you put it on a dashboard, they shift around a little bit. You can also sometimes when when you have 2 or 3 slices that are too small together, you can come up here and you can kind of reorder where they're at. Right? You can see where it did with that Africa because I moved it. So the formatting you can be a little picky sometimes. But if you have things that aren't matching up nicely, you can arrange them over here. They don't have to be like a ascending or descending bar chart. It can be moved around. Also, if there is an issue with one not showing, you can always right click and go to mark label and do always show. That'll force it to show because sometimes if they're tight together, Tableau will just hide one. And sometimes if they're overlapping, you can go to annotate and do a mark or a point. And I would name that Africa, but just so you can see where it's at. Then you can move this around instead of the let's move that out of the way for now. So what's nice about this is it has a little pointer that points to where it is. So you can kind of move it anywhere, and you can change the background, of course, so you don't have this gray box that kind of bleeds a little bit into the scene. It's kind of an eyesore. So you can format all that as well. So that's one way that you can play around the formatting. You can also use a mark, which is similar, but it's more like it pretty much takes the tooltip and then puts it out just like the other one, but now you have more information in there. And then the third one, the area, I forget what area does. That just makes a big box. What is nice about the area is you can individually move the piece inside it so that you can kind of customize. I kind of messed that up. And then you can move it around wherever you want without there needing to be a pointer. So there's ways that you can format the pie chart that, again, for a while I didn't really know existed. And then one last thing before we go. Trying to think if I'm gonna have to format everything in here. Okay, so here's some more formatting stuff. I've spent a lot of time learning formatting because just I kind of got OCD, and from a graphic design perspective, these white lines are not attractive. So you can always change that by changing this paddings. So you can get rid of the border. You should always have it sitting just a little bit off to the side, so there will always be a little bit of space between the end of the dashboard. Definitely don't like that brown, but just make it gray. So I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on formatting, just because it's tedious, but I do want to show you some simple tricks. Also, best practice on your tooltips. Um, always do the show apply button, and usually you want to do a drop down. The apply button is important because say you have a notebook with like a million records. The problem is if you don't have the apply button, every time you click something, it starts to aggregate everything in the background, which will lock up your book while the users it'll lock up the book while you try to change the filters around, which is not a very user-friendly experience. So then the apply button lets you kind of make the selections, then hit apply. Um, so if you have something that needs like a custom legend, like I don't want to do that. It's a good field here. Just segments. Okay, this is good. And again, the coloring and all that, that's the very last thing you do. Don't I never fool with color until the end because you end up changing so many things. So there are times where your legend here just doesn't want to cooperate. So let's put it right above here. Sometimes you want maybe you can align it left, you can align it center. Oh, that's the title. Anyway, sometimes there'll be instances where the legend, there you go. So you can do like a single row like this. For a long time, I didn't know you could change them like that, but also there are instances where it just doesn't cooperate. Maybe you have too many, or maybe there's just two and you can't get them to line up properly. Um, this is also a good time to use, you can play around with Figma and kind of make little custom icon boxes and stuff. But I have found in the past that if you need to, you can make a custom legend just simply by using text boxes and I think blank boxes. Let's try text boxes here. So for the first one, we'll just do this. So one drawback is you can't you Well, let me put all this in there first before I explain it. So if you want to do custom legends, all you have to do is you can either make them kind of chunky like that, or you can slim them down, or you come in here and play with the padding. So you can close this, and you can kind of make them tall and thin. So you can really do whatever you want here. But anyway, sometimes you'll get legends that just won't cooperate, and it's just better to just play around with the formatting manually. Let's see, we can scoot it over some here. Then you would do one for each one. You would just do it again for the green, blue, and then you have it across the top. Also, a lot of times, especially this background, it's so gray in the background. Sometimes you need some separation between the worksheets. You can also do that with a text box. You can come in here and just do blank box, drop it in between. I use it a lot of times as like a little filters header. Um, Actually, you would typically. So I do this a lot if I have a lot of KPIs across the top, and then I have some worksheets at the bottom. I can just do a just do the same thing. Take the background, make it a gray. Then you can do your padding. Just make the line really thin. And I know I got a lot of clutter on here, so it doesn't look as nice. As you can see, you can add little lines here to create some separation between the graphs. I often will do this right above my filters. Then I'll put some custom text right above the filters just so that customers know. I don't typically put them on the right side. I usually put them on the left or across the top. But it really doesn't matter. Anywhere is fine. So anyways, those are just some little formatting hacks that you can use to make life easier. and it's very dark. But anyway, um, it's a very dark workbook. So not colors I would keep. But anyway, you can see how the formatting, um, you can customize stuff and just little details that you can do. So I think that's everything I had.